Awaken your soul to God's transformative power in this epic journey of faith. From the weight of hidden sins and the darkness of life's distractions, to the purifying trials that ignite courage, revelation, and obedience, follow a heart trembling in prayer. Search me, Lord, and lead me into your will. Witness the soul rise from fear to deep communion, radiating God's light and leaving an eternal legacy of surrender, trust, and divine purpose. Every chapter unveils a step closer to fully living in God's guidance. Are you ready to walk boldly, trust deeply, and embrace His perfect will in your life today? In the early hours, as the world still slept, a restless soul stirred, weighed down by the burdens of life's distractions and unspoken sins. Each passing thought brought a pang of guilt, a reminder of moments neglected, words spoken in anger, and choices made in self-interest. The heart, exhausted by the relentless pace of daily life, longed for clarity, yearning for a divine light to illuminate the hidden corners of its conscience. Search me, O Lord. The prayer erupted, raw and unpolished, spilling forth from a place of desperate honesty. It was not a polished request, but a vulnerable plea, echoing in the quiet chambers of a restless heart. The words hung in the air, heavy with longing, as if the very walls of heaven could hear the tremble in the voice that dared to seek God's gaze. Yet the struggle within the heart was immediate and intense. Human desires clashed violently with the whisper of God's will, pulling the soul in opposing directions. Every instinct to follow personal comfort or fleeting pleasure was met with a gentle tug of righteousness. It was a battlefield unseen, where the tension between surrender and resistance weighed heavily upon the spirit. A shadow fell across the imagination, likened to wandering through a dark, tangled forest with no path in sight. Each step forward was uncertain. Each rustle of the unseen stirred fear. The metaphor of the forest captured the peril of moving blindly, revealing the danger of ignoring the inner call to reflect, repent, and be guided. The darkness represented both ignorance and the hidden sins that clung silently to the soul. Moments of hesitation surfaced like obstacles on the trail. Fear and uncertainty whispered, questioning worthiness and the ability to endure God's scrutiny. Yet in these moments of doubt, the heart recognized its own frailty, the necessity of placing trust in a higher hand. The longing for guidance grew stronger than the fear, and hope, trembling yet persistent, began to seep into the corners of the soul. In quiet surrender, a final whisper rose above the turmoil. Lead me, Lord, into your will. The words were fragile, almost tentative, yet carried immense power. It was a commitment to relinquish control, to invite divine illumination, and to walk forward even when the path remained unclear. In that whisper lay the first step of a profound journey, a journey of being found, purified, and guided into the embrace of God's perfect will. The soul, having whispered its first plea, felt the trembling weight of God's gaze upon it. There was no escape from the light that revealed hidden corners long ignored, corners filled with unacknowledged fears, doubts, and sins. In the quiet moments of reflection, the shadows of the past stirred, taking shape as reminders of failures, betrayals, and moments of weakness. Each memory was a flickering shadow, stretching across the mind like an unwelcome visitor in the dead of night. The heart recoiled at what it had long tried to hide, yet the pull of divine presence left no room for evasion. It was as though God's light penetrated every crevice, exposing even the tiniest tremors of pride, anger, and resentment. The inner conflict intensified, blending shame with a strange mixture of awe and fear. With each passing thought, the soul realized the magnitude of its own deceit, not only toward others but toward itself. Pretenses that had once felt protective now seemed suffocating, and the comfort of ignorance dissolved. The prayer, once a tentative whisper, became a desperate call. Lord, show me all that I am hiding from you. Fear surged as the mind wandered through corridors of regret. Old wounds, forgotten grievances, and secret desires clawed at the conscience, demanding recognition. There was a dramatic tension in every heartbeat, the temptation to shrink back versus the need to face the truth. The forest from the previous chapter now seemed denser, darker, yet the faint glimmer of divine guidance beckoned like a distant star. In this confrontation, resistance met a gentle but unwavering force. God's presence, though unyielding, was tender, revealing each shadow not to condemn, but to purify. The realization that these shadows could no longer remain unexamined brought both discomfort and hope. Each uncovered truth was like a thorn extracted, painful yet necessary for healing. The soul struggle was raw and unfiltered. Thoughts clashed violently, fear pleading for retreat, desire for control fighting surrender, yet a deeper longing urged obedience. The heart, though trembling, began to perceive a pattern. Divine illumination was not punishment, but an invitation to transformation. Moments of clarity pierced the darkness intermittently. The soul saw its own complicity in pain caused to self and others, and the gravity of God's mercy became stark. There was no escaping the truth. It was woven into the fabric of the heart's own being. Recognition of these shadows sparked a fragile courage, the kind that only surfaces when one dares to look directly into the light. The imagery of the forest returned, now with a subtle difference. Paths that had once seemed impossible to traverse now glimmered faintly under the light of God's revelation. Each step required courage, humility, and surrender, but the presence of guidance made the journey possible. The darkness had not vanished, but it had been illuminated, and the fear of wandering blindly began to diminish. In the tension of confrontation, the prayer deepened. Words formed like a chant of vulnerability. Lord, reveal what must be revealed, and cleanse what must be cleansed. It was a dialogue of surrender, of admitting that true freedom required facing the unspoken, the hidden, and the feared. The soul clung to hope like a lifeline, trembling yet resilient. By the chapter's end, the heart began to understand the paradox. Surrendering to God meant confronting what it feared most, yet in that confrontation lay the seed of liberation. The shadows remained, but their power to deceive had waned under divine illumination. A quiet, trembling trust emerged. The journey would continue, step by step, with God as guide, revealing, purifying, and leading into the light of his will. The soul, having faced its shadows, now found itself on a new terrain, the battlefield of the heart. The earlier tremors of fear had hardened into the tension of spiritual warfare. Every desire, every temptation, seemed amplified, rising like waves against the fragile vessel of obedience. The prayer that once whispered hope now cried out in fierce urgency, Lord, strengthen me. I am weak, but I choose you. This battlefield was not marked by swords or shields, but by thoughts, emotions, and decisions. Moments of fleeting peace were quickly disrupted by inner voices urging compromise, comfort, or retreat. The heart felt torn, pulled between the fleeting allure of worldly desires and the steady, guiding hand of God's will. The struggle was relentless, leaving the soul weary yet alert. Dramatic imagery filled the mind. The forest of the previous chapter became a storm-tossed plain. Shadows lurked in every corner, each whispering of past failures or future fears. Yet, like lightning breaking through dark clouds, glimpses of God's guidance illuminated the path, reminding the soul that the fight was not theirs alone to bear. Each victory over temptation was hard-won, a fleeting anger restrained, a selfish thought rejected, a prideful urge softened. Each became a battle marker in the ongoing struggle. The heart began to realize that obedience required vigilance and courage, for the battlefield allowed no passive bystanders. Faith was active, demanding engagement, endurance, and unshakable reliance on God's power. Fear occasionally surged, threatening to overwhelm the fragile courage that had begun to form. Questions arose. Am I strong enough? Will I falter again? How long must this struggle endure? Yet the prayer persisted, now with sharper edge, transforming into a weapon of surrender and trust. Lord, fight with me and teach me to stand in your strength. The tension between human desire and divine will reach its peak as the soul confronted its deepest temptations. Here, the battlefield became intensely personal. Pride, lust, resentment, and anxiety rose as generals in a silent war against the heart. The clarity gained in earlier chapters now guided the soul in discerning each subtle attack, recognizing deception, and calling upon God's presence as shield and sword. Amidst the chaos, moments of divine whisper pierced through. These were brief but powerful instants where fear dissolved into clarity and doubt transformed into trust. The prayer became more than words. It became posture, breath, and lifeline. Each whispered plea carried the weight of dependence, admitting that without God, victory was impossible, yet with him, all things could be overcome. The storm within mirrored the storms without. Life's distractions, unexpected trials, and pressures pressing from all directions, heightening the battle. The metaphor of the dark forest returned, now transformed into a war-torn valley where light pierced intermittently through shattered branches. Every step forward required courage, humility, and steadfast faith, even when the path seemed impossible to navigate. In the midst of struggle, the soul began to glimpse the paradox of surrender. True strength emerges only when weakness is acknowledged. The battlefield was not merely a place of conflict, but a forge, shaping character, fortifying faith, and revealing God's unwavering presence. The heart, though battered, began to trust that every battle fought in alignment with God's will carry eternal significance. By the chapter's close, the soul, though exhausted, felt an unspoken resolve solidifying within. The battlefield remained, but the fear of failure had lessened under God's guidance. The prayer ended in a fierce yet humble plea. Lead me, Lord, through this war, and let my heart remain steadfast in your will. The stage was set for the next chapter of purification and divine revelation. After the fierce battle within, the soul found itself standing before a path both daunting and necessary, a path of purification. The scars of conflict were still tender, yet the presence of God made the journey unavoidable. The heart trembled, knowing that true alignment with His will demanded more than resistance or fleeting victories. It required surrender, refinement, and complete trust. The trials began subtly, like drops of water slowly carving stone. Old habits, long-held grudges, and selfish desires were exposed, pressing the soul to confront the roots of sin rather than merely its surface. Each confrontation brought discomfort, yet also a sense of awakening. The soul realized that purification was not punishment. It was preparation, a divine cleansing to make the heart ready for God's full guidance. Fire and water became vivid metaphors of the soul's transformation. Painful trials burn away impurities like fire, while moments of reflection and prayer wash away guilt like a purifying stream. The imagery of flames and flowing waters underscored the dramatic process of spiritual renewal, a process that was as beautiful as it was painful. With every step, pride was challenged. The temptation to rely on personal strength rather than divine guidance arose repeatedly. The soul learned that humility was not a passive virtue, but an act of surrender to God's shaping hand. Each act of letting go felt like a small death of the old self, yet it birthed a freedom previously unknown. Fear persisted, whispering doubts about worthiness and endurance. Could the soul withstand such trials? Would the purification ever end? But in the quiet moment of prayer, the heart heard God's gentle assurance. I am with you. Walk this path, and you will emerge refined. The fear did not vanish, but became a companion of courage rather than a master. The journey demanded patience, for divine purification unfolds in its own rhythm. The soul faced tests of obedience in daily life, unexpected challenges, moment of temptation, and a persistent lure of comfort over conviction. Each test was an opportunity to practice trust, to relinquish control, and to embrace God's shaping hand. Amid the trials, moments of clarity illuminated the soul. Memories of past failures no longer weighed heavily. Instead, they became lessons etched into the heart. The contrast between human frailty and God's perfect will became more evident, highlighting the necessity of purification for the soul to walk faithfully on His path. A quiet joy emerged from the shadows. Though the road was difficult, the heart began to sense the presence of divine light, guiding every step. Each trial, each moment of surrender, revealed that purification was not only about removing sin, but about preparing the soul to fully receive God's plan. The process was intimate, deliberate, and transformative. The metaphor of the forest returned, now evolving. The dense, dark woods of the past began to thin. Sunlight broke through in streaks, illuminating the path ahead. The soul recognized that while darkness had marked earlier stages, purification allowed glimpses of hope, direction, and divine guidance to pierce through the uncertainty. By the chapter's end, the heart felt both humbled and strengthened. Painful yet purposeful, the path of purification had begun to reshape the soul's desires and priorities. The prayer shifted from mere pleading to trust-filled surrender. Lord, refine me, cleanse me, and lead me fully into your will. The stage was now set for the next chapter of revelation and insight, where God's guidance will illuminate the purpose behind every trial. Having walked the path of purification, the soul now stood on the threshold of revelation. The shadows that once seemed insurmountable had been illuminated, and the heart, tender yet steadfast, began to perceive the contours of God's purpose. Each trial endured was no longer a burden, but a stepping stone toward divine understanding. Suddenly, insights emerged like rays of sunlight-piercing storm clouds. The soul recognized patterns of past choices, understanding how each moment of obedience, each act of surrender, had been orchestrated to shape character and faith. The clarity was startling, a profound revelation that God's had always been present, guiding even through hardship and uncertainty. The prayer deepened, no longer a mere plea, but a dialogue filled with awe. Lord, now I see the threads of your hand woven through my life. Teach me to walk fully in them. Words faltered as the heart struggled to articulate the vastness of insight, for the vision of God's plan was both humbling and exhilarating. The forest of the past, once dark and confining, now appeared as a landscape of lessons. Each shadowed path represented a divine lesson, each stumbling stone a test of trust. The soul marveled at the intricate care with which God had guided every step, and a profound gratitude swelled within. Fear of inadequacy persisted, whispering that the soul could not fully comprehend God's purposes. Yet even in that fear, divine light pierced through, reminding the heart that revelation was a process, unfolding as readiness met God's timing. Patience became a companion, and trust deepened with each revelation received. The imagery of light intensified. The soul envisioned a radiant path stretching forward, illuminating opportunities and responsibilities aligned with God's will. The heart, once hesitant, now felt a surge of courage, prepared to act in alignment with the insight received. It was a moment of awakening, where understanding fueled readiness to step boldly into purpose. Memories of past failures no longer evoked shame, but clarity. The soul saw how missteps had been redirected, teaching perseverance, humility, and reliance on God. Each error, each sorrow, was now understood as an essential part of the tapestry of divine intention. Insight brought peace to the once turbulent heart. Amid the revelations, the prayer evolved into surrender-filled commitment. Lord, I see you more clearly now. Help me to walk without hesitation, to trust without fear, and to obey without reservation. The words resonated with authority and humility, bridging understanding with action. The journey of illumination revealed that divine guidance was both intimate and expansive. Every insight, no matter how small, carried eternal significance. The soul realized that understanding God's plan was not merely intellectual but transformative, shaping desires, actions, and character in profound ways. By the chapter's end, the heart had emerged enlightened and emboldened. Revelation had clarified the soul's path, transforming uncertainty into direction, hesitation into courage, and fear into trust. The prayer closed with unwavering determination. Lead me, Lord, in your perfect will, for now I see the steps, and I am ready to walk in them. The stage was set for Chapter 6, where obedience would turn revelation into living action, fully engaging the soul in God's purpose. The soul, enlightened by revelation, now faced the pivotal challenge, to step into obedience. Revelation alone was insufficient. The understanding of God's will demanded action. The heart trembled at the thought, knowing that true obedience would test courage, patience, and faith at every turn. Life's distractions and temptations surged once more, this time like waves threatening to pull the soul back into the storm of indecision. Each choice carried weight. Small compromises could fracture trust, and moment of hesitation could obscure clarity. Yet the soul recalled the trials endured and the illumination received, drawing strength from God's unyielding guidance. Prayer became urgent and deliberate. Lord, give me strength to walk in your ways. Let my actions reflect the truths you have revealed. Each word was commitment, a pledge to align thought, word, and deed with the divine path now clearly visible. The internal dialogue intensified, blending fear with a deep yearning for faithful execution. The forest and battlefield metaphors returned, now merging into a rugged terrain demanding both endurance and discernment. Each step was measured. The soul learned to anticipate temptations, resist impulses, and act with precision under God's guidance. It was a journey of vigilance, where obedience required constant alertness and spiritual discipline. Obstacles arose, some expected, some sudden and jarring. Relationships, responsibilities, and personal ambitions challenged the path of obedience. Yet, each obstacle became an opportunity to trust, to act according to God's revelation rather than human instinct. The soul discovered that obedience was less about comfort and more about faith-filled courage. Moments of failure and faltering tested resolve. The heart, though guided, occasionally slipped into old patterns of fear or pride. Yet each stumble was met with renewed prayer and divine patience. God's presence remained a steadfast support, transforming failures into lessons and missteps into steps forward along the path of obedience. Victory came in small, deliberate acts. A kind word offered despite irritation, a selfless choice made against desire, a moment of patience amidst chaos. Each was a triumph of obedience. The soul began to see that God will unfold it in incremental, intentional steps, and faithfulness in small matters paved the way for greater alignment. The dramatic tension of obedience heightened as life's trials became more public and consequential. The soul's choices now carried visible impact, demanding courage not only in private moment of prayer, but in public actions and decisions. The prayer evolved into both petition and declaration. Lord, lead me boldly. Let my life reflect your will. A quiet joy emerged, tempered by reverence. Obedience, though demanding, brought a profound sense of fulfillment. The heart felt aligned with God's purpose, sensing the fruits of revelation manifesting in daily life. Each act of faith reinforced the path, creating a rhythm of trust, surrender, and courageous action. By the chapter's close, the soul had entered a new phase of spiritual maturity. Obedience was no longer tentative but intentional, a deliberate choice to walk fully in the light of God's guidance. The prayer concluded with confident devotion. Lead me, Lord, in every step, for I will follow where you call. The stage was now set for Chapter 7, where deep communion with God would transform understanding and obedience into intimate, sustaining fellowship. Having stepped into obedience, the soul now entered a sacred realm of intimacy with God, a communion deeper than any previous experience. The trials and revelations of the past had prepared the heart to receive His presence fully, and in this moment, the divine nearness was palpable. It was as if the very air shimmered with grace, and each breath became a prayer of wonder and awe. The heart felt unburdened, yet profoundly aware of its own vulnerability. Every hidden fear and lingering doubt, once so threatening, now seemed powerless in the light of God's sustaining presence. The soul's previous struggles, the battles, the purification, the obedience, were revealed as necessary steps to reach this depth of fellowship. The contrast between past chaos and present peace heightened the soul's awe. Prayer became a flowing conversation, not a list of petitions. Words of gratitude, confession, and longing intertwined, creating a rhythm of intimacy that the soul had never known. Lord, I see you. I feel your presence guiding me. Teach me to dwell in you fully, to rest in your perfect will. The heart trembled at the tenderness of God's listening, a tenderness that penetrated deeper than any fear or sorrow. The imagery of light intensified, now warm and enveloping rather than sharp or revealing. The forest and battlefield of earlier chapters faded into memory, replaced by an open space suffused with divine radiance. Shadows no longer had power, for they were reconciled and redeemed through God's illuminating presence. The soul understood that intimacy with God did not erase the journey but honored it, transforming every trial into testimony. Reflection deepened. The soul recalled past failures and victories, recognizing how each had been used to shape character, refine desires, and align the heart with God's plan. Every trial was now seen as a stepping stone to this profound communion, and the gratitude that welled up was overwhelming. Even moments of pain were embraced, for they had led to this transformative connection. Fear and hesitation returned briefly, reminding the soul of human fragility. Yet these moments were quickly met by the steady, reassuring whisper of God's presence. You are mine, and I am with you always. The words resonated in the soul like a protective shield, reaffirming that deep communion requires trust, not perfection. In that trust, fear lost its grip, replaced by unwavering faith. The soul's vision expanded beyond itself. Intimacy with God revealed the heart's role within a larger divine tapestry, the purpose of past obedience, The fruits of revelation and the lessons of purification now converged, showing that the path of communion also carries responsibility to reflect God's light in the world. The heart swelled with both humility and resolve. Moments of silence became sacred. In these pauses, the soul felt God's guidance as clearly as a hand resting upon it, directing thoughts, desires, and actions. Every whisper of intuition, every gentle nudge toward righteousness was received with gratitude. The heart learned that deep communion is as much about listening as it is about speaking, about surrender as much as joy. The prayer shifted into continuous praise. Words flowed naturally. Lord, you are my guide, my light, my peace. I rest in your presence, and I follow your will. The rhythm of communion became life itself, a state of being rather than a fleeting experience. The soul understood that intimacy with God transforms every moment, even amidst the chaos of the world. By the chapter's end, the soul had reached a transformative clarity. Deep communion had reconciled past struggles, illuminated purpose, and strengthened obedience. The heart was filled with peace, courage, and joy, ready to walk fully empowered in God's will. The stage was set for the final chapter, where walking boldly in his plan would become the living testimony of the entire journey. The soul, having entered deep communion with God, now stood at the threshold of action. Every trial endured, every shadow confronted, every moment of revelation and obedience had led to this point. The heart felt fortified yet tender, ready to walk boldly in the will of the Lord. There was no hesitation, only a trembling anticipation of the journey ahead. Life's challenges no longer inspired fear, but purpose. Each distraction and temptation became a test of fidelity rather than a threat. The soul understood that walking in God's will meant not merely knowing the path, but stepping onto it fully, with courage and conviction. Every step taken was a visible testament to the transformative power of surrender and divine guidance. Prayer became both petition and proclamation. Lord, I am yours. Lead me, guide me, and use me for your glory. The heart, once burdened with uncertainty, now carried a profound peace. Each word resonated with the weight of experience, shaped by struggles, purification, revelation, and intimate communion. The soul spoke not out of fear, but from confidence in God's guidance. The imagery of light and path returned, now radiant and unshakable. The forest, the battlefield, and the storms of previous chapters were behind, remembered but transformed into markers of triumph. The road ahead stretched wide, illuminated by divine wisdom, and the soul moved forward with unwavering trust, fully aware of the mission God had entrusted. Obstacles appeared, as they always do in life, but they no longer shook the heart. Challenges in relationships, career, and personal aspirations were met with prayer, discernment, and faith-infused action. The soul realized that walking boldly in God's will does not remove difficulty, but empowers one to meet it with courage, grace, and steadfast obedience. Joy mingled with determination. Each act of faith, each decision aligned with God's purpose, became a celebration of divine guidance. The soul discovered that living in God's will brings a dynamic, ongoing peace, a joy that endures even when trials persist. It was a joy born not of circumstances, but of unwavering alignment with God's plan. The heart's journey now radiated influence beyond itself. Walking boldly in His will inspired others, reflecting God's light in ways previously unimaginable. The soul recognized that purpose in God's plan carries responsibility, calling for action, love, and service that extend outward. The journey was no longer private. It became a living testimony. The prayer, though continuous, took on a deeper resonance. Lord, let my steps honor you. Let my life reflect your truth, your love, and your will. The soul experienced the fullness of obedience and surrender converging, transforming not only inner life, but the very way it interacted with the world. The climax of the journey arrived at a moment of profound clarity. Past struggles were now understood as preparation, past fears as teachers, past failures as stepping stones. Every chapter of the soul's journey culminated in a decisive embrace of God's will, wholehearted, unwavering, and radiant with purpose. By the chapter's end, the soul walked forward, unafraid, fully empowered by divine guidance. Each step was a declaration of faith, Each breath a testament to surrender, each moment a reflection of God's transformative power. The prayer concluded not in words alone, but in a life wholly given to His will. Lead me, Lord, and I will follow boldly, faithfully, and joyfully all the days of my life. The journey, now complete, was both ending and beginning, a life fully aligned with the Creator, ready to shine His light in the world. The soul, now fully walking in God's will, felt the weight of responsibility shift into the joy of purpose. The clarity and courage gained from every prior trial, battle, and revelation now demanded action, not just for self, but for the world around. Walking boldly had transformed into living intentionally as a vessel of divine guidance. Each morning became a sacred opportunity to align thought, word, and deed with the divine plan. The soul remembered the trembling plea of chapter 1 and marveled at the transformation. Fear had been replaced by trust, hesitation by courage, and doubt by unwavering faith. Every act now carried the imprint of God's presence. Challenges arose as expected, yet they were no longer sources of despair. Difficult relationships, uncertain futures, and worldly distractions became platforms for exercising obedience and spreading God's light. The soul discovered that walking in His will did not eliminate trials, but empowered endurance, shaping character and inspiring others. Prayer deepened into constant communion. Lord, let my life be Your instrument. Let my decisions reflect Your wisdom, and my heart radiate Your love. Words were no longer mere expressions of need, but affirmations of alignment. The soul had learned that living in God's will was not a destination, but a dynamic, ongoing journey of intimacy, courage, and service. The past battles, shadows, and purification now revealed their true purpose. Each struggle had prepared the soul to carry God's light into darkness, to act with discernment and a love without hesitation. Reflection brought both humility and gratitude, knowing that divine guidance had been constant even when unseen. A sense of vision emerged. The soul began to perceive how individual obedience could ripple outward, touching lives beyond comprehension. Acts of kindness, forgiveness, patience, and courage became testimonies, showing that walking in God's will transforms not only the heart, but the world itself. The imagery of light became vivid and encompassing. The forest, battlefield, and path of purification were now merged into a radiant horizon. The soul understood that true alignment with God illuminates both the inner life and outward actions, creating a life of influence, impact, and divine reflection. Fear occasionally surfaced, whispering doubts about sufficiency and strength. Yet each time, the soul recalled the intimate communion of chapter 7 and the bold steps of chapter 8. The lessons of past obedience, trials, and revelation fortified confidence. Faith had matured into a dynamic force that met every challenge with resilience. The soul embraced the sacred rhythm of giving, serving, and reflecting God's light. Life became a prayer in motion. Each word, thought, and choice flowing from surrender guided insight and divine intimacy. The heart had become a vessel, purified and filled with purpose, ready to act as an instrument of God's will. By the end of this chapter, the soul stood fully alive in the divine plan. The journey from awakening, through shadow and battle, through purification, revelation, and communion had culminated in action, living a life fully surrendered, fully courageous, and fully radiant with God's presence. The prayer echoed not as a plea but as a declaration. Lord, continue to lead me, so that every breath, every step, and every moment may honor You. The soul, now seasoned through battle, purification, revelation, and communion, faced the ultimate frontier, eternal surrender. This surrender was not a momentary act, but a lifelong posture, a continual alignment of will with God's purpose. The heart recognized that every prior step, from fear to obedience, from revelation to bold action, had led to this profound state of devotion. Morning prayers flowed naturally, no longer tentative but charged with authority and trust. Lord, I am Yours forever. Lead me, shape me, and use me for Your glory. The soul felt the gravity of the words, as if each syllable carried the weight of every struggle, every shadow confronted, every trial overcome. Life's challenges intensified, yet the soul moved through them with calm authority. The storms that once threatened to derail courage now became arenas for faith to manifest. Obstacles in relationships, work, and personal trials were met not with fear, but with clarity and conviction, as God's light guided every decision. The imagery of past chapters, dark forests, battlefields, flames of purification, merged into a luminous panorama. The soul walked forward with full awareness that even trials, temptations, and uncertainties were instruments in God's orchestration. Shadows remained, but they no longer held sway. Light illuminated every path, every step, every choice. Prayer transformed into constant dialogue. Words of praise, gratitude, confession, and guidance intertwined, forming a rhythm of surrender that extended beyond moments of reflection. The heart understood that eternal surrender is not passive but active, a continual engagement of will, heart, and mind aligned with God's perfect plan. Memories of past victories and failures became anchors. Each step taken in obedience, each temptation resisted, each moment of revelation internalized, fortified the soul's capacity for surrender. There was a profound peace in knowing that God had guided every stage, shaping character, desires, and purpose into a vessel capable of reflecting His glory. The soul's influence expanded outward. The transformation within radiated into the world, touching lives through acts of compassion, courage, and wisdom. The journey of surrender became both inward and outward. Personal growth intertwined with the call to serve and illuminate God's path for others. Fear occasionally whispered, questioning sufficiency and strength, but the soul now met it with unwavering faith. Past experiences of communion and revelation had forged a confidence rooted in God's presence, a trust unshakable in the face of uncertainty. The heart no longer sought security in self, but in divine guidance. The prayer now culminated in a quiet yet powerful declaration. Lord, I am yours without reserve. Every breath, every step, every thought, may it honor you and fulfill your will. It was the echo of a journey completed yet continuing, a surrender not as an event, but as eternal devotion woven into the fabric of life itself. By the chapter's end, the soul had achieved the ultimate union with God's purpose, a life fully surrendered, fully illuminated, and fully active in obedience. The journey from awakening in fear to walking boldly in divine guidance reached its pinnacle. Eternal surrender was no longer a distant goal. It had become the very essence of living in God's will, a luminous testament to trust, courage, and faith. The soul, now living in eternal surrender, discovered a new horizon, the calling to radiate God's will into the world. The journey of awakening, battle, purification, revelation, and obedience had forged a life aligned with divine purpose. No longer inward focused, the heart now reached outward, shining as a beacon of God's light. Every action became deliberate and prayerful. The smallest choices, words spoken, hands extended in help, patience offered in adversity, became instruments of divine influence. The soul understood that radiating God's will required vigilance, humility, and intentionality, transforming ordinary life into sacred opportunity. The challenges of life persisted, yet they now served as stages for illumination rather than obstacles. Conflicts in relationships, professional trials, and personal struggles became platforms to demonstrate faith, courage, and divine alignment. Each trial conquered radiated evidence of God's guidance and the strength found in surrender. Prayer took on a new cadence, blending praise, gratitude, intercession, and direction. Lord, let my life shine as your reflection. Use my words, my deeds, my choices to glorify your will and bring hope to others. The soul felt empowered as divine purpose became visible in both small gestures and monumental actions. Memories of past trials, the dark forest, the battlefield, the purifying fire, now appeared as the very tools that shaped the soul into a vessel capable of radiating light. The scars of struggle became marks of wisdom, courage, and resilience, evidence of God's transformative power at work in the human heart. The soul began to notice subtle ripples of impact. Encouraging words sparked hope in despairing hearts. Act of kindness healed emotional wounds. Choices rooted in faith inspired others to seek divine guidance. The once inward journey now created a chain reaction, showing that obedience and surrender do not remain private. They radiate outward. Fear and doubt attempted to whisper once again, questioning whether the impact was sufficient or visible. Yet the soul recalled every stage of its journey, remembering that God's work often unfolds silently, and that the fruit of obedience is sometimes hidden yet eternal. Trust in divine timing fortified courage and continued action. The imagery of light expanded, enveloping not just the soul, but its surroundings. The metaphorical forest now glowed, the battlefield transformed into a place of triumph, and the path forward radiated with divine clarity. Each act of alignment with God's will illuminated the hearts of others, showing the transformative ripple effect of a surrendered life. Prayer merged with action seamlessly. Living and praying became inseparable as obedience and service intertwined with reflection and gratitude. The soul realized that radiating God's was not a separate chapter of life, but the natural outcome of eternal surrender, an ongoing, living testament of faith in motion. By the chapter's close, the soul stood fully alive in God's purpose. What had begun as a trembling plea for guidance now manifested as a radiant life of influence, courage, and service. Every shadow confronted, every trial endured, every act of obedience had led to this moment. A soul fully surrendered, fully empowered, and fully radiating God's will into the world.